My name is Stephen Pu, co-founder of the Taraxa project, and welcome to our AMA. So today I will primarily focus on talking about our roadmap 2022, which we rolled out, I think, earlier last week. Okay, so let's get to it. All right. So first, we'll give a quick status update of the Taraxa network, show you some of the statistics that are happening. Then we'll get to the roadmap 2022, and then we'll have some time for Q&A. Okay, so in terms of status update, as of, I guess, last night, the staking, we have 409 million Tara tokens staked, and we have 349 million Tara token of that stake. We have 349 million delegated. So thank you very much for everyone who has participated in the staking and delegation to help secure the Taraxa network. In terms of network statistics, on the mainnet candidate, we have 59 consensus nodes. And on the testnet, we have 249 block producing consensus nodes. So this is great. We have plenty of active node operators on both networks. And so once again, thank you very much for participating. In terms of our development, and this is related to the roadmap, we have two primary milestones, right? The first one is native token conversion, and the second one is the launching of the social listening application. The first one is around 47% completion, and the second one is around 30% completion. And we'll get into some of those details in a little bit. A big reminder, as you can see, we don't have 100% of all the people who have staked delegating, so please do delegate. We have around 14.5% of stake tokens that still have not been delegated. So please delegate ASAP. We have this QR code on the right side of the screen where you can look at a step-by-step guide on how to delegate. If you don't delegate, you don't earn yield. So please, please, please delegate right away. If you have questions, coming to our Discord server, taraxa.io/Discord, and we'll answer your questions and help you out if you have questions about how to delegate. So please delegate if you haven't already. All right, so we get to the roadmap 2022. So we have updated roadmap 2022. The goal of this roadmap, is really have two primary goals here. The first one is that we want to make sure that the progression, our development progression, actually tracks specific milestones. So everyone knows exactly what we're working towards. The second one is, of course, to make our updates, our progression updates, a lot more human readable. Before they were, I think, filled with technical jargon and were not really that helpful in helping the community understand where the development team is focusing its efforts on. All right, so with that, let's go check out the roadmap one by one. All right. Okay, so the roadmap is, to get to the roadmap, just go to taraxa.io/roadmap. So that's going to be our updated roadmap website. And, in roadmap 2022, we actually have two large milestones, as we talked about before. The first one is native token conversion, and the second one is social listening, okay? So let's go down and check out the roadmap. So we have these milestones at the top that shows an aggregate completion rate based on all the components that we're going to be looking at, okay? So some of these components, for example, for the native token conversion, we have components that actually belong to the underlying protocol, right? So anything with a little chain here is a protocol-related component, a protocol-related task. Anything with a little plant here is an ecosystem or related task. Okay, so let's just go through these one by one so everyone knows what they mean. So for the first one, first off, we have something called stability, right? So stability hopefully is very easy to understand. It's basically that the network is stable, it doesn't crash, it actually operates according to our expectations. There aren't any sudden unexpected behaviors, right? So what are some components? What are some of the things that we're working on in stability, right? So here are a few examples. One of the things that we've been working on is really to stabilize or rather get rid of the oscillations in the dynamic difficulty. But the dynamic difficulty is basically the network is trying to respond based on network traffic and based on how many consensus nodes are participating, how easy it is to produce a block. So we don't overproduce too many blocks and end up with tons of overlapping blocks with tons of overlapping transactions in them. And we don't underproduce blocks so that there aren't enough blocks to contain all the transactions, right? So that difficulty, we need to stabilize it so it doesn't spike up suddenly or spike down suddenly. So we've been trying to deal with that oscillation, and I think we're close to actually completely solving the problem. Right now, there's the latest fix is on DevNet, and it looks pretty good. Okay. Another big thing in stability is this bug that we've been seeing, which leads to a disproportional distribution of block production versus how much delegation you have. And I think everyone who has participated on the testnet has seen this problem, so that the community nodes were producing too few blocks compared to the development nodes. And that was a problem that we had to fix. It's a very nuanced, very interesting problem that we're addressing. Several other examples of tasks within stability are things like, PBFT time has to be consistent, so we have to have very consistent times between when we produce PBFT blocks, and this is very critical because later on in the economics of the protocol, rewards are going to be given with the expectation that there is a consistent timing between PBFT blocks. So we're actually able to give out rewards matching the annualized yields as expected by the delegates as well as the node operators. So these are some of the examples of stability-related tasks, okay? And the second one is another big one is security, right? So obviously prior to the launch or the conversion of the token, we need to make sure the security is really up to snuff. And security just means that, the network cannot be easily attacked either by external malicious players or accidentally by ourselves, which we've seen actually on our test network in the past year. So some of the interesting tasks that we're working on in security, one is Ddos Protection. Our nodes are not accidentally overwhelming the network on its own by replaying a lot of invalid transactions, right? So what we saw actually last year on the testnet network was that there were some of the nodes would actually start producing invalid transactions and sending out packets, and then the other nodes would think are invalid, but then those packets keep getting sent around over and over again, even though they are invalid, right? So these type of things are definitely not great because it overwhelms the entire network. It floods the network with unconfirmed invalid transactions and prevents normal operations of the protocol, right? Another interesting thing that we've been working on is peer blacklisting. So it has to do with, it's actually related to the issue I was talking about before, which is that if we notice nodes that are consistently sending out bad packets, invalid packets, they will actually blacklist, right? So if I'm a node and I hear other nodes or other specific nodes telling me things that are invalid consistently, I would just blacklist them and disconnect from them, right? And that disconnection might last, 10 minutes, 20 minutes or whatever before I come back and see, well, have they recovered or did they fix themselves? If they still are sending out invalid packets, we disconnect them again, right? So things like that. Okay. So the third one that we're looking at is economics, right? So economics is probably, much easier to understand. These are basically the fundamental building blocks of how rewards are generated and distributed, right? So some examples of economics are, staking contracts, delegation contracts. that are going to be built directly into the protocol. We want to make sure that these contracts are upgradable over time, so that we're not stuck with something that might be buggy, or the community might have voted to change the way that it behaves, so we can upgrade it. Fundamental things like transaction fees, block rewards, these are all things that fall under the economic category. So these are things that we've been working on. Conversion. Conversion is actually pretty simple. So that just means the token conversion plan, right? So when we talk about the conversion plan, we are specifically talking about the technical mechanisms that we're going to use to actually perform the conversion. So currently we have several plans that we have on the draft board, and then later on, as we test them, we'll confirm which one is the best. So so it consists of actually having a very detailed plan exactly how we're going to implement this technically, the native token conversion, and also a timeline, as well as a communication plan, right? So exactly when it will happen, and we'll give the community a very, very, very long notice period to make sure everyone has plenty of opportunity to actually do it. And we'll definitely run a few tests on the mainnet candidate so that everyone can test it out to see that if this is the real conversion and we converted it today, can you get access to your tokens, for example? Does everything work? Do all the wallets and everything else work as expected, right? So that's really the conversion section. Okay. So the community side, right? So now we're getting into the ecosystem section. So anyone who has staked or participated in one of our bounties or ran a node has had interaction with our community side. So some of the things that we definitely need to make sure that is working really, really, really well for the community side, prior to native token conversion, are things like delegation. Delegation needs to work really well. So delegation right now is being done actually centrally through a set of scripts in the community side. The rewards are also being calculated centrally. The reason why we have decentralized mechanisms is because we want to make sure that we have something to compare against the protocol's economic calculations. So if the protocol calculations don't match up with our scripts, right, calculation, then that means the protocol, there's something wrong with the way the protocol is calculating it. So we need a reference point to know whether or not the protocol is behaving correctly, right? So that's part of the delegation. We want to be able to actually give out automated rewards so that we aren't manually calculating the rewards once every month, and perhaps we can actually give out the rewards more instantly later on, so that so that there's you don't have to wait a month to get your rewards. Okay, and then another really big change on the community side is the wallet-based logging. So right now, we're logging in through email and password, which is not really ideal because there's no validation on the wallet. Since all rewards are tied to wallet addresses, we want to make absolutely sure that people are using wallets to actually verify wallets to actually log into the website. So that's another big change. So these are all things that we're working on to make sure that the community site as a tool is ready to serve the community, to act as an interface between the community users and the network's protocol when native token conversion comes. Documentation, right? Documentation, there's a variety of documentation that's really necessary it needs to be in place, right, prior to the native token conversion. So the biggest one here, the biggest documentation task here is really the exchange integration technical documentation, right? So in order for the exchanges to actually integrate, to actually perform the native token conversion along with us as development team, they need to know how they can integrate their exchange technical infrastructure with the Taraxa network. So that documentation is being prepared. We don't expect any problems with that documentation since Taraxa's RPC layer is perfectly backwards compatible with Ethereum's RPC layer. So any tool set that the exchanges have been using for Ethereum can be redeployed to work with Taraxa's network. So we don't really foresee a lot of problems with that. And the last part, which is the exchange integration. Now this part is really a lot of I would say, a lot of technical and administrative tasks put together, right? So there are several very important steps, and they happen in sequence. This is after speaking to a lot of the exchanges to figure out what are their requirements in order to get the integration done. And this is the part where it's highly unpredictable, right? I think a lot of community members have asked us, you know, why don't you guys have like specific dates on these, right? When are you going to complete them? Why don't you have specific plan to date? Well, actually, a lot of the reason is because we don't have exact dates when we're working with these third-party partners, right? So, for example, when we talk to exchanges, they say that, well, first of all, in order to do the native token conversion, there's a very long line. So you have to wait in line for many months, and they wouldn't tell us exactly how many months it is until we have a prerequisites of a security audit report and a fully completed exchange integration documentation, right? So the documentation we can work on and we can have a timeline, but the security audit, once again, we have to go to the security audit firms and then talk to them about what kind of audits are necessary for our ledger. And layer one audits are not, you know, sort of standardized products like contract audits, for example. They're very custom made, and that requires time for them to understand exactly what our protocol does and test it accordingly. So that process is also unclear exactly how long it will take, and they will need to take time, study it, ask us a lot of questions. There's a lot of back and forth before they come up with a proposal, and then we have to take it to the exchanges, make sure they approve of the proposals, and then we start waiting in line, and then, you know, we'll try to get a more precise time frame from the exchanges and how long do we have to wait in line. So there are just a lot of variables here that we're not really in control of, but we're trying to push the process forward as quickly as we can. We've already spoken to over 5 different audit firms, and we're trying to get proposals from them. They're planning their pricing, exactly what they're gonna, what types of audits they're gonna do. We have a list of, you know, sort of the minimum required audits that we as a development team would like to see actually done. We've already spoken to the three exchanges that the foundation has contractual relationships with, KuCoin, Gate.io, and AscendX. So they needed to see the security audit as well as the integration documentations before they can put us in line, and then they'll have a better, you know, better idea about how long we're going to wait in line. So we're still optimistic about the length of time we get to wait in line. We hope that wouldn't be too long. And like I said before, I think one of the biggest integration strengths of the Taraxa network is our RPC layer is fully backwards compatible with Ethereum. So we don't really expect that, you know, we will wait as long as some of the other layer one projects that have, you know, written entirely new standards on their own, which would be very difficult for an exchange or anyone else to integrate with. So we should be much faster than they are. So we'll definitely keep everyone updated on this progress. This is the top priority for us, the native token conversion. So please watch. You know, stay tuned to our progress. The second major milestone, and I think many in the community have already guessed from looking at our GitHub activities, is the social listening application platform. So I think I've spoken at different times about the social listening platform, but fundamentally, you know, in accordance with Taraxa's overall, you know, mission, which is to make data, you know, tracking informal transactions, to make data trustworthy by using decentralization, right? Trustworthy and useful, right? Using decentralization. So we're also looking to make social data, which is, you know, social informal interactions between people. We're trying to make that useful by making it trustworthy through decentralized gathering and analysis. Okay. So we are right now focused on the bottommost layer, the most foundational layer, which is the data provision layer, right? The data provision layer basically is a distributed network of nodes that are collecting data from publicly available social network, social chatter, basically. We're not collecting anything that's private. We're not sneaking into private groups and listening on people. We're only going to groups that are publicly open to everybody. So there wouldn't be any, invasion of privacy there. So that layer is something that we're focused on. We have our goal right now is that we want to join we want to join a set of known open Telegram groups, right? So Telegram is our first targeted platform, and we want to join. I think there's around 18,000 groups that we can potentially join. Not all of them are going to be crypto related, but we're going to join these groups and figure out which ones are relevant, and which ones aren't, right? So that requires us to set up a distributed set of nodes, and they would join different groups on their own. They have to coordinate in terms of who's gathering data for which group, and they have to be careful not to gather data too aggressively, or else obviously Telegram will shut these nodes down because they're ingesting way too much data, right? Okay, so the second part of it is the analytics layer. The analytics layer is really taking that data out that we've collected and then actually be able to conduct analysis on it, right? So the analytics is a little interesting. So we can actually do simple analysis for things such as just searching for specific terms in order to identify trends and to try to quantify influence, right? So these are several types of things that we can actually do. So simple searches, simple queries, identify related terms, identify trends as dictated by these terms, and also try to quantify the impact of specific topics or specific campaigns, right? So when someone says something, or when a group of people talks about a specific topic, what kind of impact does that have in this social platform in general, right? So, so for example, 2 people, 3 people talk about something in 3 groups. What is the impact within these 3 groups? Are there any rippling impacts, secondary rippling impacts across other groups outside of these groups, surrounding these topics? So these are all things that we're very, very interested in. And all of this goes to our sample use cases. So what are we building this for? Well, the ultimate use case that we actually want to build it for is actually to create an ecosystem in which, and we're treating this as sort of as a very interesting resource, right? Basically, people's social attention, right? How can we create a decentralized ecosystem in which social attention is being intelligently and intelligently invested, not invested, but directed, right? Intelligently directed, and its impact is being fairly and trustworthily quantified. So the big pain point really is that, as a crypto project like ourselves, and as all these other crypto projects, as everyone knows, and as a lot of community members keep reminding us over and over again, we need to promote ourselves, right? We need to market ourselves. But one of the biggest roadblocks to actually effective marketing is your marketing actually having an impact, right? I think in taking a step back, I think marketing in general doesn't matter if it's in crypto or in other industries. It's very difficult to calculate the return on investment, right? So it's not like sales or manufacturing or even R&D where you can actually calculate, pretty accurately what your return on investment is, right? Marketing is very, very difficult to calculate return on investment because it's very hard to measure exactly what your marketing dollars have done for you. And that was the problem that we keep running into. And quite frankly, every crypto project I know runs into this problem, is that if they spend money into a specific social campaign, what was the impact? There are very few ways to reliably and quantifiably measure that impact. And hence, there's also a very, very big problem of these campaigns only having very, very short-term impacts, right? So we see, you run a social campaign, a bunch of random people, people probably have nothing to do with crypto, come over and do exactly what you require them to do, and they get the rewards, and then they leave, right? And then you probably got nothing out of it, right? So maybe you got some traffic, but 99% of it leaves like within a day. Maybe those people that came and tweeted or said something about your campaign, participating in your campaign on Telegram, they had nothing to do with crypto, right? So they just took money and did basically what they did was had no impact whatsoever. This is a very similar problem actually to what was happening in DeFi, right? So we all know about people paying a lot of money for liquidity, but then these liquidity providers come in, get the reward, they just leave within like a few days, right? So it's not having a lot of impact. This problem is like 100 times worse in social because it's much harder to actually determine the impact of any social campaign. So we do want to create an ecosystem where social attention can be accurately directed and fairly rewarded, right? So that, you know, a random person that's linked you with crypto says something in a crypto group, which nobody replied to him and nobody said anything afterwards, probably gets way less reward than someone who, for example, is interested in crypto, has been talking about crypto for like the past 3 years, is in a crypto group and talking up your project, and other people are discussing your project as a result, right? The secondary impact. So so this is a very, very compelling use case, I think, and it's something eventually we want to build towards. Of course, you know, having a data layer as well as an analytics layer, it doesn't limit us to that specific use case. So I think you know, we can build a few simple examples and invite other other builders within the larger crypto community to actually come and see if they can make use of these interesting signals, right? Things like querying for simple terms, occurrences, trend identification. Perhaps they can use the way that trends are emerging in their trading strategies. You know, these are hypotheses. People who are much more familiar with how crypto trades work probably can get better use out of it than we can. So, so that's our social listening application. Okay, so the third category here is the development backlog. Okay, the development backlog is really, you know, these are a set of development priorities. They are still priorities, but they don't quite directly contribute to our 2 milestones, right? Which were native token conversion and the application launch, right? So, so inside these development backlog, you know, we have things like performance, right? It's a ledger related task. So things like, are we going to optimize the actual speed, right? The throughput of the ledger. We're going to optimize the latency. We're going to minimize the amount of system resources each node takes, right? So for example, one of the things that we have made quite a bit of progress on is the development of a light node, for example. So I think a lot of people that were running nodes saw that the nodes were taking up a ton of disk space very, very quickly, right? That's because obviously we're running at a much higher TPS than Ethereum. So we ended up, you know, producing, we could very easily produce the equivalent of the entire Ethereum history, the size of the entire history in a much shorter amount of time. So having a light node that actively prunes that history is something very basic that we can do. There are much more interesting ways we can create light nodes, but this is probably the most reliable and the simplest version that we can create. So those are a few examples of what we're doing in the performance block. In terms of benchmarking, is that once we have fine-tuned a lot of the performance metrics, we will start running stress tests to benchmark exactly how our node performs. And this, I think, is very important as a way to signal to the developers that, hey, our platform is really performant and it has the right characteristics. It has the speed, it has the latency, it has the it has the low fee profile that these that modern developers in developing Web3 applications would be looking for, right? Okay. The fourth one is dApp support, right? So dApp support are things that will make developers' lives easier, right, when they're developing on top of Taraxa. So one example would be that, you know, this is something that we've been wanting to integrate for a while, which is GraphQL. GraphQL integrated into each one of our nodes, so that it's very easy to actually query the underlying blockchain database, right? And the last one is the node dashboard, right? Sorry, that's not the last one. The next one is the node dashboard. So anyone who has run a node on our network knows that it comes with a browser-based dashboard that shows you some of the statistics of the node. Later on, I think we're going to continuously develop this this dashboard to make sure that people have a more visual way of figuring out what the node is doing and what's happening to the node. I know that reading these logs, it's not the most fun thing to do, so I think increasingly placing more of the signals that we're seeing in the logs into the dashboard as a visualized signal, I think that would make things a lot easier for node operators to figure out what's going on with their node. And it makes it a lot easier maybe for them to report problems, right? The Explorer, right? So the Explorer, everyone, I think probably has at some point looked at our Explorer. We have an Explorer for the testnet. We have an Explorer for the mainnet. So we have the basic Explorer in place, but there are a lot of other things that we can be doing. We need to optimize the infrastructure to make it actually work faster. I think often you guys see that the Explorer, perhaps the indexer is not as fast as it could be, and it's actually behind the actual network. So we need to have better APIs so that other people can actually connect to the Explorer, or they can stand up their own Explorers and maybe run like an Etherscan type service if they wanted to, right? We want to integrate multiple network support into the Explorer so that we don't have two websites like the mainnet and the testnet. So we just have one site for all of them. And I think it would be cool to actually add the DevNet, the internal developers network, onto that as well. We do actually later on want to also have a widget, right, actually built into the node. That's purely voluntary. You can have it or you don't want to have it. That actually reports back system statistics to the Explorer. This way, it can actually help us to figure out better, what type of how the system resources increasing and decreasing of which impact node performance, block production, chances of producing a block, things like that. So a lot of interesting things that we actually want to build into the Explorer. Okay. So the next two things on this on the backlog are actually related to our application. The first one is the integration layer. So we're going to need to, once we have a basic use case and the data analytics set up, we want to make sure that there are ways that third-party developers can actually integrate and pull signals, right, out of our platform for usage in whatever the app or use cases that they want to work on. And lastly, obviously, we want to decentralize the entire app platform. So right now, the platform is run in a distributed manner, but it's not running a decentralized manner because we own all the nodes. So later on, we want to make sure that other people can run these nodes, of course, earning rewards in the process. Okay. So hopefully that is a informative walkthrough of our roadmap and our goals. The reason why we didn't include all those technical details is because we thought those details were too technical probably, and they're shifting around all the time. And so it was a little bit confusing. We included all those details in our previous tech updates, and the feedback wasn't exactly great. So that's why we got rid of them. And we're trying to strike a balance between, informing the community of our progress pegged to specific milestones, at the same time, not giving you guys too much information so it's confusing. If you do want too much information, feel free to go into our GitHub repos. They have all the details that you would ever want. Look at our pull requests. A lot of them are tagged, and you can probably check out, what kind of progress that we're making. Okay, so pairing with the roadmap 2022, we have these new types of updates. Okay, so these type of updates, for example, we just released one last week, which is the progress update for weeks 6 and 7. So in these updates, as you can see, all the highlight progress are going to be very, very tied into the roadmap, right? So you know exactly, you know, the types of things that we've been working on, you know, how do they contribute to our overall goals, right? So so these are all the things that we're working on. They all get us towards completing the native token conversion. These are the things we're working on for the application launch, right? So hopefully these will be much easier to read and make a lot more sense. So, all right. All right, so that is it for the roadmap update. Let's go back to the, let's go back to the presentation. All right, so now it's time for Q&A. So let's see, we have questions here from the Q&A. Okay, the first one, US residents are not getting staking rewards while the supply is getting diluted, and in current market conditions, very painful. So this is not really, will this be addressed soon? So according to the foundation's lawyers, after the native token conversion happens, the KYC will no longer be required for staking and delegation. And that's one of the reasons we're working as fast as we can to make sure that the native token conversion takes place as quickly as we can. It's unfortunate, but we have to comply with all relevant local regulations. So, when big bounty submissions are reviewed. Okay, so I think this question was, I'm assuming that you're asking about bug bounties. So I think these are being reviewed by our technical team, and they should show up in the next month's bounty distribution. So, while stake Taraxa without gas fee or less gas fee in future is possible. Yeah, so after the native token conversion, we really won't have to deal with Ethereum fees anymore. It would just be the Taraxa network's fees, which will be way lower, right? I think it would probably be negligible, right? So another good reason why we should push for native token conversion as quickly as we can. In Taraxa IO website, able to view a lot of confidential data of other users. Yeah, I think we are aware of this. So thanks for submitting the submission. Although it's kind of interesting that you see this on Taraxa IO because you're probably talking about the community site, right? Because Taraxa IO, the primary website, doesn't have any user information. Okay, yeah, we'll definitely look at this. We're aware of this bounty. Yeah, thanks for submitting it. I am a performance tester using a load runner and JMeter tool. How can I support anything relevant performance test perspective? This is great. You know, thank you very much for telling us this. When we do get to the performance test part of our work, we're definitely going to need help from the community to help us complete this. Yeah, so thank you very much, and please stay tuned. We'll be working together in no time. Thanks. Okay, so let's go to Twitter. So let's go back to Twitter and look at some of these questions that we're seeing. Okay, so first one, hi Stephen and team, regarding the social listening app, what is the roadblock towards implementation and adoption, considering data privacy infringement has become a growing concern, a growing problem, and legislation varies across countries? And any plan B if you can't overcome the roadblocks? Thanks. Well, right now, we don't foresee any impassable roadblocks. So the social, in terms of privacy, like I said, we're collecting information from publicly available information. So it's not like it's hidden and we're trying to steal it, right? We're not trying to take anyone's personal information or anything. It's basically, someone who's talking in a public forum that anyone can join. We're just collecting that data. I think definitely we will need to consult with lawyers in terms of what type of legislation we need to comply with. Specifically, I think Europe's GDPR. So that's something that we need to check out. I think there's this clause that says right to forget, right? So that's something we need to explore. But I don't think those things are impossible to do. So our primary goal is to get the applications up and running, and then figure out how we can stay within regulatory compliance. Because, like I said, technically speaking, I don't think any of those things that require us to comply with localized regulations is hard to do. Okay, so thanks for the question. Second, when exactly Taraxa launched native token? We need native because gas fees is killing people. Yes. I don't know exactly when. I think in my earlier in the presentation, I think we've explained that it's hard for us to give exact timelines because the audit firms and the exchanges are not giving us exact timelines yet. So that's something that we just have to iteratively find out as we go forward. I don't like it that we don't have exact timelines either, but because we're working with third-party partners, it's not entirely up to us. All we can say is that we're working as fast as we can to make sure this happens as quickly as we can. Okay. Hello, Stephen. The Taraxa project focuses more on preventing minor data losses. Okay, so first of all, I don't think that's what we're trying to do here. I'm not sure exactly what that means. We're not trying to prevent data loss. Once you find a solution to the problem, will big companies really want to use the project? In other words, who is this project for and what does it mean in real life? Why is it so important? Yeah. So we're trying to make sure that data is useful by making it trustworthy, right? So I think some of the examples we've given before were, machine-generated data for the asset leasing use case because no one was trusting the machine-generated data. There were a lot of friction and arguments between the lessee and the lessor. And everyone along the value chain, distributors, repair technicians, and all these kind of things. Because that data was not trustworthy, people didn't use that data, and therefore their decision making is flawed, and there's a lot less business to be done because they can't agree on who gets paid how much money, et cetera, right? So that's an example. Another example is, of course, our social listening application. Right now, there's a lot of, like I explained before prior in this presentation or in this AMA, that there's a lot of data that's available out there, but it just hasn't been sort of gathered in a way that's trustworthy and analyzed in a way that's trustworthy so that people can actually help to quantify marketing return on investment, for example, right? So this is actually very, very important. Lots of people and companies and projects have this problem. We are, for the social listening platform specifically, we're going to target crypto projects like ourselves in the beginning. We ourselves will be a core user of this app platform because we feel that pain point every single day. The governance model looks interesting. What's the current ideal composition? Best sectors, industry, council members to be drawn from? The size of the council, also very interesting idea of aggregating social listening. Yeah, so we don't really have specific ideas about this yet. It was, this was designed in conjunction with the foundation. But I think for us, I mean, the people that are obviously ideally, the people that are going to be on the eventual council are going to be representatives of people or groups that have a stake, right, in the ecosystem. So they're either people who hold a lot of Terra, for example, or they're people who actually are big users of the application and services provided by Taraxa. It would be really great to have these people there. In terms of sectors and industries, I think that's just going to happen how it happens. We know that a lot of other protocols actually manually selects people to actually sit on the council. That's not really so decentralized in our opinion. We think that proposals for candidates and the election process should be done once again in a decentralized manner. We have faith in the democratic process. So it's going to be slow, but I think it's the most fair and transparent way to conduct decisions, right, in a decentralized ecosystem like this. So we don't have any specific preconceived ideas about what are the best sectors or whatever. It's just, whatever the community decides is, should represent them, right? What is my skin in the game in an agreement? Is there Taraxa in escrow, or would I be blackmailed based on my socials if I fail to honor the agreement? So I think this is something you're probably referring to the construction use case, right? When people are recording their informal agreements or the hashes of their informal agreements into the blockchain. So very interesting question. There's no locked escrow amount or blackmail. There's no blackmailing or anything like that. This is based on this very simple concept of just people having basic human trust with each other, right? So imagine that if you're a contractor, you're working with other contractors on the same job site, and you're consistently reneging or going back on your words, reneging on your agreements, even though when people have provided proof that you specifically agreed to something, then what's the consequence? Well, then people will stop working with you, right? You won't get involved. You will not get hired into projects. Other contractors wouldn't want to work with you. Prime contractors, architect firms will not want to work with you, things like that, right? So that specific use case was actually created with the understanding that the participants are people that work together, face to face. I'm not sure this works out for, crypto anonymous agreements. That just doesn't work. That does require some sort of escrow probably, and it's going to be a lot more complex than what we described. Yeah. So different use cases require different types of application design. The ones that we specifically design is for people who work face to face on a day-to-day basis. Okay, so I have a question to Mr. Pu. What is the user privacy role in this data collection works? I saw an app that works on Telegram groups, and how does Taraxa keep privacy data secure? So once again, I think we're not collecting any private data, right? The data is publicly available. Anyone can look at it at any time right now. We're not collecting anything that's private or people have any expectation of privacy too. Okay, so no personal information. Look, if you go into a public Telegram group and you enter all your personal information, that's sort of your fault, So what we're polling is basically what people voluntarily enter into a public group that anyone can join, anyone can see. So fundamentally, we're analyzing or collecting and analyzing data that's already publicly available to anyone who wants to see it. So it's not, not private data. Okay, it is quite obvious that the market is not in its best shape. What are the plans of Taraxa to protect the Terra token value and protect its investors? Well, I think the best way to protect the value is to release our products faster, right? So that's and then raise awareness for those products and drive traction for those products. That's the most sustainable way to do it. Any other way to do it only produces short-term hype effects that disappears very, very quickly, and it damages the project's reputation. and it produces no lasting impact. So, you know, it's always been our stated approach to actually develop the project's reputation and our product in a way that's sustainable for the long term. Right? We're not going to shoot for any short-term boosts, which invariably don't last very long. Right? I think this also answers the question: when do you start with some good marketing? When we push out our products and we gain traction with users, right? With targeted users. Hey, Stephen, Taraxa's controller feature will a working NFT. I'm not sure what that means. What controller feature you mean? I think one of the use cases that we were thinking of for the social listening application, we thought that it would be very interesting to actually introduce some social trends when it comes to specific crypto assets. So we think that might be useful, although exactly how useful that would be is going to be up to the traders. So we'll release some sample applications, sample signals, and we're going to engage other developers and traders to see just how useful they are. At this point, I'm not really sure because I'm not a professional trader. Talking to some other traders, I think they think that social data has some use, but maybe on-chain data has even more immediate impact on their trading decisions. Okay, what do you prefer for Terra, deflationary or inflationary? Well, this is a macroeconomic question, right? So obviously inflation, nonstop infinite inflation is not good because it destroys the value of the token. Deflation is also not great because then it constantly reduces the supply and eventually creates an undersupply that you don't even have any Terra to use, right? So I think it needs to be a balance, just as in normal economies, right? I think central banks try to make sure that, obviously I'm not saying I'm a central bank or we're a central bank, but central banks try to make sure that inflation is in step with real economic growth, so that it's, you know, it's the money supply keeps up with the growth of the economy. And I think that should be the goal here as well. So I don't think it's either inflationary or deflationary. Real economies, sustainable economies are growing, their currencies are always inflationary, but not so much that it devalues their currency, right? So in designing the economics of applications, which will be tied into also the Terra token, I think it would be wise to introduce inflationary mechanisms that emit rewards, but also deflationary mechanisms that encourage everyone to lock up their tokens for the long term, right? So that is something that we have several iterative designs in place already, and we feel pretty good about them. And I think we should strike a balance when we do deploy them later. Okay, I'm a loyal investor. Is there a reason why I should choose you among thousands of projects in the world of crypto? I would like to ask Mr. Stephen the following question: what makes this project different and special? Well, I think what makes it different and special is, quite frankly, we're trying to solve a problem that hasn't been solved before. Okay, I think I described before with our social listening. Well, with all of our use cases that we've done with whether it's with IoT or machine generated data for asset leasing, informal agreements for construction, and the social listening to help you to quantify the impact of marketing campaigns. There aren't products like this on the market that solve these problems. Okay, so I think what makes us different and special, well, because we're solving problems that other people are not solving, right? We're not really looking to create incremental small changes or improvements on existing solutions. We're looking for radically new solutions that can really help to solve a problem rather just to sort of make it less painful, right? I think has always been the stated goal of our project and the mentality of our team. I think, that I think would be, hopefully that's attractive to a potential investor. Yeah, hopefully that answers your question. So we have another Q&A. I'm not sure if that's a question. It says if Bitcoin, Ethereum price fall, Taraxa also reacted to that in future. I believe Terra now follow the market leading coins. Yeah, maybe. Hopefully that will happen. I'm not, like I said, an expert trader, so I don't fully understand all the economic forces that are going behind all these pricing changes. Okay, so that will end our AMA, and let me just put up a few useful links as usual. So, so here are some helpful resources for everyone to check out. The first one, if you haven't delegated your stake, please delegate your stake. Okay, if it's being staked and locked and not delegated, it's not really doing anything. You're not earning yields, and you're not helping to secure the network either. So please delegate right now. The second one is the roadmap 2022, and you can reach it also by typing taraxa.io/roadmap. Okay. And the third one is our Discord server for anyone who has technical questions about, who wants to engage in technical discussions. You can also reach it by going to taraxa.io/Discord. Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much, and we'll end our AMA here.